All right, I get a lot of questions about punting. People know I love punting. I do it all the time. So one of the questions I get a lot is, okay, I'm punting category A, B, C, whatever it is. Which players should I be targeting? And now, on the surface, pretty simple. You're punting blocks, you target guards. You're punting assists, you target bigs. It's fairly straightforward. For me, punting is... it's almost as simple, not quite, almost as simple as two theories or two thought processes. We'll get into that. Welcome to Stuff It, Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Remember to go and like everything that we do at Old Man Squad. A lot of stuff coming out. Follow Noah, follow Dan, follow myself. Jacob Dunn has just jumped on board. We've got Eric Ong as well. So go and find all of us on social media. Head over to YouTube, give all of the videos a like, a download, a subscribe, everything you need to do. The numbers are slowly increasing. It's been exciting. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel, brought to you by Fantrax. Punting. So, yeah, simply put, two thought processes. You punt guard stats or you punt big man stats. And if you're in a 9-category league, it is almost a split down the middle. Assists, steals, threes, free throw percentage. They're your guard stats, typically speaking. Now, obviously, the league is sort of changing. We're getting multiple players who play multiple positions, out of position stats. But generally speaking, your guard stats are points, threes, assists. Not points. Assists, threes, steals, and free throw percentage. Your big man stats are rebounds, blocks, field goal percentage, turnovers. That's 8 categories. The 9th, points. Where does that fit? Now, generally speaking, now this is even broader, but points tend to go with guards a little bit more. It is easier later in drafts, even through the middle of drafts, to find points if you are targeting guards. It's harder if you're targeting bigs. Think Walker Kessler, Daniel Gafford, Derek Lively, Mark Williams. All of these players that will give you big man stats won't necessarily give you points in high volume. Now, average points production in a sort of standard 12-team league, roughly 17 to 18 points a game. Now, you're not going to find that in a big man, typically later in drafts. Guards, wings, possibly. Michael Porter Jr., Cam Thomas, Cam Johnson. I don't know. I mean, Dennis Schroeder for a month might average that. There are options. There are players who can give you 15, 16, 17, 18 points, 20 in some situations. So that's basically what you're looking at when you're punting. You want to, and if you're looking at a multi-cat punt, which of course I'm happy to punt 4 categories, you usually want to punt 2 categories within one of those 2 groups. For example, if you're punting blocks, it's a lot easier to then punt rebounds, field goal percentage, than it is to punt blocks and assists, because you're targeting different types of players in a build like that. So certain categories tend to correlate better with others, and it's fairly straightforward. It's not rocket science. So for this exercise here, when I'm talking about players that you want to be targeting when you're punting a certain category, I'm actually going to talk about players that aren't easy on the surface. Didn't explain that very well. Another example, punting assists, like I said, very easy to just target big men. If you don't want assists, grab a Walker Kessler, grab an Anthony Davis at the top of your draft. Vice versa, if you are punting blocks, just target guards because they don't block shots. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to cover, say, punting assists. I'm actually going to give you guards that you want to target because that is the harder thing to do. Or if you're punting blocks, who are some big men you can target? Because you still need to fill out your roster. And if you're only punting blocks, not multiple categories, you still need rebounds. You still need field goal percentage. So who are some centers or power forward eligible players that get a bump in a build like that, but don't necessarily drag down those other big man stats like rebounds, field goal percentage, turnovers. So I was going to do this sort of one category per show, but I reckon I can bang this out. I think we can probably spend 4 to 5 minutes on each category. I'm only going to do 5 categories. So I'm just going to do points, rebounds, blocks, assists, and steals. So 5 categories. I'm not going to worry about threes too much. Threes are a category that you can get off the waiver wire quite easily. And percentages, I'm not going to worry about at the moment. I may come back and do a show covering those categories. But yeah, I'm just going to start with the 5, I think. And I think we can sort of get through this quite quickly. So let's start with points. As I said, it's sort of the neutral-ish category. It's the one that isn't necessarily linked directly to a position or a spot on the floor. But punting points is actually quite a straightforward strategy. It's a great strategy. A lot of players get a bump. Now, subconsciously, whether people mean to do it or not, points are the category that they chase. A lot of managers will just chase points because they're the highest volume category. They look fancy. So someone that gets you 26 points a game looks appealing. They may only get you 4 rebounds, 2.5 assists, 0.8 steals, shoot 45% from the field and 78% from the line. They tend to get swept under the rug a little bit with certain managers. Now, of course, some managers are across everything and look at everything equally. But for a lot that are new to fantasy or just aren't as invested as others, they will see that points category and it will determine which player do I go with, A or B. This one scores more, I'll go with him. Now, obviously in points leagues, pay no attention to what I'm talking about. Do go and download the show, but this is not relevant. So when you're looking at punting points, it's a fairly simple process. Like I said, you want to look at your projections, whatever you're using, Basketball Monster, hashtag, RotoWire. There's a range of them out there, and look at the players that are whose value comes from anything other than points. So look, it's quite, if you wanted to, I mean, again, it'll depend on the platform that you're using, but if you just sort by rank, you can see points. This is projected. This player is projected 26, this 28, this one 14, yet they're in the same range. You know that they're probably going to be a good punt points player. You can sort by points per game. Sort highest to lowest. Go down into your players that are averaging 18 and below, 17 and below. And you'll know the names. I mean, you're familiar with where players are positioned in rankings by now. So you'll see, oh, this player is only averaging 16 points per game. I know he's a top 40 player. That means he's probably a good punt points player. So some really obvious ones. Dyson Daniels, perfect example. Very good at steals. And we'll touch on him later with some of the other categories. But projections have him top 40. He was amazing last season. He's going in that range, the 30 to 40s. He's probably going to average 14 points a game. So very good example of a player whose value comes from everything but points. Now, obviously, his value is tied heavily to one category, and that can hamstring you a little bit later in drafts. So who's a player that helps you in more than one category? Amen Thompson, another really good example. ADP, Fantrax 25, Yahoo 30, projected to probably be a borderline first rounder, top 15, top 20 at least. He may only score 17 to 18 points a game. Now, obviously, no Fred VanVleet. He gets a bit of a bump, but 18 points, like I said, that's average. And Amen Thompson is not an average fantasy player. He will help you in rebounds. He will help you in assists. He will help you in steals. He will help you in blocks. He will help you in field goal percentage. So there you go. That's what you're looking for. These players, Asar Thompson, his brother, exactly the same, not to the same level, but the same blueprint. We know what he's going to help us in. And then you can look at, your centers. Like I said, points do tend to lean a little bit more into that guard wing range. A lot of centers who fit this bill quite nicely. Jakob Poeltl, he's a really good one. Walker Kessler, we talked about him. Mark Williams is another one. A lot of options there. Your higher volume guys like Steph Curry, Wemby, Jokic, doesn't really impact their volume, their value too much. So when you're looking at points, like I said, you really want to just focus on those other categories. Who's ranked high but doesn't score a lot of points? Tamani Kamara, he is one you can get a little bit later in drafts. Look, Josh Giddey, I guess, to some degree, even probably 18 to 19 points, again, average, but he'll help you across multiple other categories. So it is a really good strategy, and one that I think people are starting to experiment with a little bit more. So just be aware of that. If you decide to go down that path, there may be others in your league that are looking to do the same thing. And that can make things a little bit more tricky, because you might be targeting very similar players. So someone in your mind like Asar Thompson, whose current ADP is in the 90s, you may think to yourself, well, I can get him at pick 80 quite comfortably. If you've got two other teams in your league that are punting points, Asar Thompson is going to be at the top of their list, and they will potentially take him in the 60s. You'll miss out on him. So a lot of this sort of harps back to when you are drafting, keep an eye on what other teams are doing. Just have a look at the players they're taking. If you can see a team that's taken, and I can speak to this because I do it, Anthony Davis, Amen Thompson, Dyson Daniels, with their first three picks, you can safely assume they're probably going to punt points. So just be aware, have a look at where they're drafting, where you're drafting, and then maybe move Asar Thompson up based on that, and just sort of say, hey, I'm probably going to have to reach a little bit to get Asar Thompson here. Mark Williams might go around earlier. He's going in the 70s or the 80s. Maybe you have to reach into the 60s to get him. So just keep that in mind. All right, that's points. The next four, we're going to group them in two. So we will start with steals. Actually, no, let's start with assists. So a very guard-heavy stat. So like I said, I'm not going to talk about centers that we can target in this build, because most centers you can target. There are exceptions. Alper and Şengün, Jokic are two very obvious ones. So I'm not going to worry about those. I'm going to talk about players that are guard or wing eligible. Now, I'll focus more on guards. So I'm not going to talk about someone, for example, like a Lauri Markkanen, who is on Yahoo is small forward eligible, but he's not a small forward wing, I guess, in the typical sense. So yeah, there's a lot of players at the top of this list for me who are small forward eligible, but aren't your typical small forward players, I guess. So let's focus more on the guards here. And there's obviously some ones late. There's a lot of players that will get you some steals late in drafts. Think Keon Ellis, Chris Dunn, who else? Lou Dort, to a lesser extent. They'll get you some steals. They don't get assists, but I'm more looking at players who you can target at the top of drafts here. So who are some guards? And you do need to be aware that if you're punting those guard stats, like I said, you still need to fill your guard spots. And if you leave it until round 8, round 9, you are going to be stuck with these players like a Keon Ellis. And ideally, you don't want that. You don't want to have to be relying on borderline players who are going to play 25 minutes a night, who won't really help you anywhere else. You don't want to rely on them for your guard stats. So having a look at guards, Cason Wallace, another really good one. Now, I'll sort of put him in a category of his own, I guess, because I actually think I'm comfortable taking him inside the top 100. Many would have him in that range, sort of with your Chris Dunns and Alex Caruso would be another one. I'd have Cason Wallace a few rounds ahead of them, because I do think he's going to play 28, 29 minutes a night. I think they really like him. But a bit of a tangent there. So let's have a look at some guards, point guards, shooting guards. Jalen Suggs, a really good example, can get assists, but it just isn't going to. They've got Desmond Bain, they've got Paolo, they've got Franz. All of them, they'll all get assists. So Suggs is a really nice guard. You can target in the 90s, who will get you some, not a lot of points, but he'll get some points, some threes, steals. Brandon Pajemski is another one. I like him. Dyson is another one. Now, again, he can get assists, but with Trey there, he just doesn't need to. And they also have Luke Kennard and Nickeil Alexander-Walker now. So I think Dyson is a really good punt assists guard. And we've talked about the upside in steals there. I'll throw Keyshawn George in. Now, again, he is a little bit later in drafts, so not a priority. Desmond Bain, we talked about Suggs. I think Bain is another one. He's another guard that might only get 3.5 to 4 assists, but he gets you the other guard stats. Even Shea, he's obviously going right at the top. I don't mind him in a punt assist build because he doesn't actually get an astronomical amount of assists. It's not a strength. It's not a weakness. But I don't mind him. Dante DiVincenzo is another one I'd be happy to target later in drafts. Austin Reeves, again, he'll get some assists, but he's not your elite assist player. Reed Shepherd. Peyton Pritchard is another one. So these are some guards you can target in the 50s, 60s, 70s even. Normally I'd have Tyler Hero in here, but obviously he's injured. I do think he's going to handle the ball a little bit more this season. So look, there's a few guys that actually can help in that build. Bradley Beal, another one, a little bit later, where he's going this year. And then if we go over into punt steals, now we're obviously not going to have Dyson Daniels in this discussion here, but some guard eligible players that don't really care about playing defense, I guess. Zach LaVine, very good example. He's also a punt assist guy, but doesn't really get any steals, but gets you those points and threes. Free throw percentage. Keontae George is another one. Anthony Simons, depending on how much he's going to play, but he'll play enough to be rostered. Even look right into the top, someone like a Devin Booker, he'll struggle to get 1 steal per game. He might just scrape through, or he might be at 0.9. Steph Curry also only gets 1 steal per game, and he's not getting any younger. Kobe White is another one. So there's actually quite a few guards in that sort of 10, 20 range through to about 60 that you can get. Jalen Brunson, quietly not a good stealer of the ball. So he gets a little bit of a bump in a build like this. And then you've got a lot of guys later. D'Angelo Russell would be one. Jalen Green is another one. Even your Austin Reeves, maybe 1 steal a game. Shaden Sharp. So there's actually quite a few guards in the top half of drafts here that you can target in that build. Now, we'll get into the big man stats. Before we do, I'll just remind you that, we are brought to you by FanDuel. Today's episode, and we're getting closer. I mean, head over to the sportsbook.fanduel.com. All of their odds are up already. All the player betting, regular season MVP, defensive player of the year, rookie of the year, most improved player. Most improved is going to be an interesting one. Amen Thompson is actually the favorite there. Asar is at plus 1,600, Amen plus 900. I think Asar would be my pick over Amen. It will depend on the voting, but I just think Amen was actually really good last year. So for him to be most improved, he'd have to go to a stupidly high level. I think Asar Thompson has a clearer pathway to greater improvement. Andrew Nemhard would be another one. He's at plus 1,000. Shaden Sharp plus 2,200. So a few nice names in there. We're going to get an idea of what the rotations look like in the next few days when preseason starts, but no Scoot Henderson in Portland. Shaden Sharp's going to have to play a bit more. So, I do like some of the odds there, but up to you. Sportsbook.fanduel.com. Head over there and have a look. Let's go into the big man's stats. What are we sitting at for time? We're at 19. We're good. All right. Let's start with rebounds. So again, I'm not going to talk about guards. You can target a range of guards in this build. And I've sort of limited it to power forward eligible players, but a lot of the power forward eligible players are also small forward eligible, and they never actually play power forward. Dylan Brooks is not a power forward. Mikal Bridges, rarely. Herb Jones, not really. Jalen Williams, not really. So, there's a few players there. So I really want to look at your center eligible players here. And, of course, top of the list is Brook Lopez. Now, he's not going to play a lot this year. He's coming off the bench. He's still someone you could consider late in drafts if you need some blocks and threes from your center spot. But he barely rebounds the game of the ball. So nothing's going to change there. Miles Turner would be another one. He's obviously someone we're taking a bit higher, but playing in Milwaukee, his rebounds they could even drop because Giannis obviously dominates the ball there. So just two very obvious ones. But if we're looking at some other centre eligible players, Jaren Jackson is one. Now he's going to miss the first maybe 2 weeks of the season, but he is good in a punt rebound build. Jay Huff for the Pacers, he could start, not a good rebounder. He gets blocks, he hits threes, but he does not rebound the ball in high volume. So I would look at him. If we're sticking with top end kind of center eligible players, Pascal Siakam is one. Not a high rebounder. He's center eligible for whatever reason, but yeah, I don't really think he's going to play a lot of center. And then you sort of move down into your mid to low level centers, and in a build like this, you can wait until the 50s, 60s, 70s to get your center. Porzingis is one that you can look at. He's fairly neutral in this sort of a build, so he'll get rebounds, but not a ton. There's other center eligible players who are late in drafts. Naz Reid is one. Draymond Green, again, center eligible. And often in a build like this, especially if it turns into a multi-category punt where you're punting, say, rebounds and blocks and then maybe field goal percentage, you're probably going to end up drafting one or two centers only, and that's fine, unless you're in a weird Yahoo league with two center default, but change that if you are. You probably will find yourself targeting players who are center eligible but don't actually play center or don't play a lot of center. So like a Draymond Green, like a Pascal Siakam, he's another one. Because they don't get a sort of your typical big man stats, I suppose. And then scrolling down a little bit further of my list here, you've got some centers that you can target later but aren't going to play a lot of minutes. So Derek Lively, Daniel Gafford. So they're good rebounders, but they're not going to play enough to get 11 rebounds a game or anything like that. Nick Claxton is another one. Surprisingly, not a great rebounder for what he does. And then, you've got power forwards. You need to fill your power forward spot. So if we're looking at players that actually are going to play power forward, you've got some of those scoring-minded players, I guess, like your Cam Johnson. Kevin Durant actually doesn't get a lot of rebounds for a power forward eligible player. So there's a few names. Lowry, he's a decent rebounder, Lowry Markkinen, but as long as Kessler's there, they've got Filipowski there. He's only going to get you 5 to 6 rebounds a game, and that's in punt territory. So yeah, some names. And then shifting into blocks, again, I'm not going to worry too much about Lowry Markkinen. He's a good one to use, isn't he? He doesn't block shots, but you don't necessarily expect block shots from him. But you do expect block shots from your power forward to some degree, and of course your center. Now Jokic, right at the top of your draft, punt blocks is a really good strategy for him if you're drafting Jokic and wondering what to punt because he is so good in so many categories. Blocks to me is probably the obvious one. Threes is another one you can look at, but he doesn't block shots at all because he doesn't jump. So 0.7, 0.8 maybe. Good at everything else. Sabonis is another one, even fewer blocks than Jokic. So Sabonis, Jokic are two very obvious ones in the top 20. Cat is another one you can throw into that bucket who doesn't block shots. You've got those center eligible players like I talked about. Pascal Siakam is one. Vucevic is another one in this build that you can look at. If we are specifically talking about centers, and your power forward, a lot of power forwards that don't. Michael Porter Jr., Cam Johnson, LeBron, he's a power forward eligible player, doesn't block shots anymore. Bam Adebayo, he's a weird one. So Bam actually, I think people assume he blocks more shots than he does, but he actually doesn't block shots. And especially with Khalil Ware there, he's having to do even less on that end of the floor. So Bam is a really good a fit in a punt sort of big man stats build. And then, you sort of move through. I mean, Jabari Smith, he's later in drafts. I've got him on my list here too. Onyeka Okongwu, again, I think he's one of those players where people think he blocks 1.3 shots and he doesn't. What's his role going to be here? We're still not sure. But with Porzingis there, who is a shot blocker, if they're sharing the floor, Okongwu will do less. If Okongwu starts at center and Porzingis comes off the bench, I don't think that's going to happen. Then I guess maybe Okongwu has a little bit more upside, but there'll be times where they do share the floor, so it's just going to mess things up a little bit. John Collins, another one. He doesn't block shots. He sort of did there for a year or two. He was serviceable on that end of the floor, but now he just really doesn't block shots at all. DeAndre Ayton could be in for a good year. I'm certainly not high on DeAndre Ayton, but doesn't do much defensively. Interestingly, Joel Embiid, now I'm way off him this season, but if you are considering him, don't expect him to block shots because he can't jump anymore. If you watch him, his mobility is shot. I haven't seen him but in any sort of scrimmages or anything at the moment, but based on what we saw last year, I think he's going to be managed. He'll probably play half the games, which is why I'm not touching him, but he's not that top 5 player anymore. He doesn't have the mobility and potentially the confidence to block shots and be playing above the rim, so to speak. Still a very talented player, but just not the upside that we saw. Ivica Zubac's another one block a game maybe. Even your players who I think have a little bit more upside on the defensive end. I don't think we've seen the best of them, but Jalen Duren, Mark Williams are two. Isaiah Hartenstein you could have in that list as well. They actually only block sort of the low ones. I do think there is upside for them to get to 1.3, 1.4 at some point in their career, but I don't know if that's this season. So, a lot of names there. I did manage to cram it in under 30 minutes, so we'll put a bow on it there. I might do another show, but hopefully that just gives you a bit of an idea of which players you can target when you're punting certain categories, but players who aren't as obvious as targeting a guard when you're punting blocks. That's everyone knows that. Do let me know what you thought of the show. Like, subscribe, download, follow me. Lots of content coming out. My player spotlight series will continue. So what they are, simply put, are 5 to 6 minute videos, which I'm doing live on Twitter. When I get a spare 5 to 6 minutes. They then uploaded to YouTube at a later date, but you can catch them live. They will just pop up, so there isn't really a lot of time or to announce that they're coming up. But you can also always go back and rewatch it on Twitter, and I'll share that. So, and if you don't have the time, go and watch it on YouTube. As I said, head over there and follow everyone that's doing all the good stuff. Thank you to FanDuel. Thank you to Fantrax for sponsoring this episode. I'm Adam King. This has been Stuff It, a fantasy basketball podcast. We are done.